WaterChain, which is an incubation of Origin Clear, a public company. So we know the problem. 1 out of 5 children dies of waterborne diseases. More people die from water than war. 80% of all water in the world is never treated at all, and in some countries it's 95%. There's a terrible problem. Millions of people die every year from water. Water, problem with water, and the water industry is trying to do something about it, and it's generally called outsourcing, where private-public partnerships are created, and water treatment is decentralized. But it's going too slowly. That's where we want to step in and help that happen. All right, so what are the opportunities? Of course, distributed water funding. We can get projects funded that have ROI and that investors can directly benefit from. NGOs, of course, are funding water projects, but they need better transparency. They need to know what's going on with the money, that it didn't end up in some Swiss bank account. Also, they would like to bring about trade, not aid, as many Africans are telling us. There is the opportunity to create a water consortium. That is, to bring in the water utilities, the large water companies, the device manufacturers, and so forth to the table and create a project together. Remember that the water industry is not fighting decentralization as the energy industry is. Why? Because developed country infrastructure is falling apart. In the US alone, it's going to take $250 billion to fix. Not going to happen. And in other countries, population growth has taken over, or there's no infrastructure at all, no treatment whatsoever. And so the water industry wants help, and they will consort with us. And there's a final part here, which we're still keeping under wraps, which is the whole concept of proof of water, which is mind-boggling, and you will be hearing from it, so it's very important that you sign up at waterchain.io. So what about water funding? What can we do? Well, there's small devices. You can have air harvesters. You can have rainwater collectors that are very cheap. You can have large devices, bottom left there, modular systems that are prefabbed and dropped into the ground and put to work. There's these NGO units, water harvesting farms. There's a wide variety. You can literally these days take a shipping container, drop it by the ocean, put a hose in the water, and you've got fresh water. So all these things are available today. The technologies are not the issue. It's adoption. That's where we want to do the work. All right, so what is proof of water? Well, basically, we have, of course, it all starts with somebody, there's got to be money in the system. So somewhere there's a smart contract where the water user, just like Solar City, the water user commits to a long-term pay-as-you-go contract. And that is the engine that drives the rest of the virtuous circle. Investors staking into that project, the modular water facility being deployed, clean water being generated, IoT devices that verify the production, and it comes back to more funding, more decentralization. Now this works all the way from microloans all the way up to very large industrial scale systems. So for example, we have a treatment facility that's being funded by a smart contract that's been escrowed by the water user and the investors. Very simple. This is a very simple use case. And as I say, we have much more native structures coming. This is really the early days for WaterChain's vision as we incubate it within Origin Clear. But having said that, we do have a CEO. David METZLER is a longtime investment banker, VC, based in San Diego. He's done a variety of things from his days in the Navy, and he is currently working on an ICO in the travel space. So he's a perfect blend of finance guy, done his own startups, and wrapping up an ICO himself. So we're very pleased to have David on board. He is still consulting, of course, because WaterChain is still inside Origin Clear. And as we complete the seed funding of WaterChain, it will spin off very, very soon. Now we have a team. Tom Marchicello is fantastic. He actually developed the blockchain algorithms for the Chicago Mercantile, and he's also involved with a number of ICOs, including Ivy. Zach Garcia is the guy who created this cool counterintuitive idea of butter and coffee. What's that all about? And Bulletproof was the result. And then Reese Morgan was number 53, I think, at Microsoft. and a very, very sharp technologist indeed. So that's our initial advisory team, and that's the brain trust that's putting this together for David and myself. Origin Clear is currently doing an accredited investor round, and what's special about this is normally people get invited to ICOs and they feel really lucky if they're part of a pre-ICO or a private pre-sale. Well, this is far before that. We're asking accredited investors today to help us angel WaterChain as a public company in return for public company stock and preferences in the ICO that are far greater than anyone else would get. So that's a very, what is special about being a public company doing an ICO? Number one is we have liquidity. We can raise money without having to mortgage control of the ICO. And secondly, Jeff was talking earlier about how we don't have KYC in the US. Well, there's a lot of issues in the US, and one of them is that people are uncomfortable with wallets. And they're like, what are those digits? And I could lose everything and all those terrible nightmares. And so we have a lot of investors are much happier buying stock in a public company. And so there's a small number of these, and that's, I think, another asset that we have because we can get this funded through the public stock ownership process. Out of all this, we do think we're going to make a huge difference. It's very hard to move the needle on water. It's a huge problem. It's very structural. There's a lot of adoption issues. Look at Flint. Years later, people still have terrible water. And their alternative is what? Bottled water. This is a disaster. And so there's an opportunity to make a real change happen in the water industry. And it starts here, we think, with WaterChain.